Now, a while ago, I did a video on the best Pokemon by stat for each generation, and the video did surprisingly well, that people seemed to enjoy it, and it was a fun trivia video that I realized I haven't done anything for the 7th generation on these lines just yet, so let's go and change that with a 7th generation best Pokemon by stat for Pokemon Sun and Moon. So, with Guzzlord, we can already guess that there's going to be a little bit of a trend with this video in that the list is going to be dominated by Ultra Beast, but Guzzlord having a really crazy amount of hit points on that 223. Defenses are kind of low to offset that, and I've already done guides for all these Pokemon, so mostly it's just going to be the trivia aspect of this. Next up for attack, we have Kartana. So Kartana's 181 attack is an absolutely mind-blowing number considering Pokemon stats. That this is a non-legendary, non-mega Pokemon that can still run an item while also having a 181 attack that's usable in pretty much every form of competitive play. That's kind of scary to think about. Now, we do get a change of pace when it comes to the defense stat, that Toxapex has the highest defense in the 7th generation while just being one of the craziest tanks ever made. Game Freak gave it Regenerate. Game Freak knew exactly what they were doing when it came to developing Toxapex as like a ridiculously tanky Pokemon, and it shows by being #1 in defense. Next up for special attack, we have Xurkitree with the highest special attack. Again, it's just like, oh, all the Ultra Beasts on all of the non-defensive stats. Way to go, Game Freak. That's pretty crazy right there. 173 special attack. Again, just an insane stat when comparing it to the other Pokemon in the game. And then we have a bit of a surprise for special defense. It's Toxapex again. So, Toxapex is the most specialized defensive Pokemon in the 7th generation, and this kind of made me want to do the video. That I was like, oh, that's fairly interesting. Maybe it's just going to kind of be like a fun trivia video. This video might actually be worth doing now. Much like Shuckle, Toxapex has highest defense and special defense when compared to other Pokemon, and it seems very deliberate that the Ultra Beasts are very specialized, that they have these insane stats, as well as all prime numbers for all of their stats as well. That's a little bit of trivia for Ultra Beasts. I was going to try to find a way to make a video based on that, but it's really not enough information. So what better time than do it on this, like, oh, Ultra Beast best Pokemon stats in 7th generation kind of video. But yeah, it just kind of shows right there. And then we go into the Pheromosa for the speed. 151 on the speed. It outspeeds a lot of Scarf Pokemon. It outspeeds most of your regular Pokemon as well. It's just an insanely fast Pokemon. And then showing a strong mix of attack and special attack stats. And that's where I think this video is pretty interesting, that you look at it, and 4 of the 6 stats belong to Ultra Beast for the best in the 7th generation, and then Toxapex takes the other 2. So that's pretty crazy right there. And then if we just ended it there, it'd kind of be an underwhelming video. So let's go and hop on over to Cerebi, where they have a list of all the Pokemon by stats, and we can try to figure out the other Pokemon in the 7th generation and where they rank compared to the rest of the Pokemon generations as well. So Zygarde, do we count this for the 7th generation? Because Zygarde is ranked right under Guzzlord as a 7th generation introduced Pokemon with a high hit point stat. But then we have to go all the way down to the legendaries, and then we have to go even further if we want to find another Pokemon. And surprisingly enough, it's going to be the Beware. So Beware is the highest non-legendary, non-Ultra Beast Pokemon in the 7th generation for hit points. While it is a very respectable hit point stat, we see other Pokemon like Throw just randomly on the same level of hit points, and then we can see some other Pokemon. Wailmer beats it, Vaporeon beats it as well. So as far as tanks go, Beware not insane on that tanking, but also does have a pretty solid attack stat as well. So I thought that was a pretty cool surprise, that Beware has the highest hit points for a normal Pokemon. And then we can go and head on over to the attack stat. So yeah, Kartana is just absolutely insane. That we have a Mega Legendary Pokemon, a Mega Pokemon, and then just Kartana here when it comes to the attack stat. It's not even that much of a difference. 190 is the highest, and Kartana has the 181. But if we want to find the next highest attack for a Pokemon in the 7th generation, we have to scroll down quite a bit. That we see a lot of other Pokemon, that a lot of these Pokemon are just kind of accepted for having a good attack stat. There are a lot of Megas along the way, but we do see some non-Megas, and then we make it to Wishiwashi. Would you have guessed that Wishiwashi has the highest attack stat of a non-Ultra Beast Pokemon in the 7th generation? There's no legendaries above it, so Galio and Lunala do not have a higher attack stat than 140, so I thought that was another pretty crazy surprise as well, and it goes into the same when we go into the special attacks. So I'm going to skip defense really quick and then go into the special attack. So Vikavolt has the highest special attack at 145 for the 7th generation, and then Wishy-Washy gets second place with that 140 on the special attack as well. So it's very strange that Toxapex has the highest defense and special defense, and then Wishy-Washy has the highest attack and almost the highest special attack. So the highest stats just locked into 2 Pokemon effectively, and then with different stat distributions that can change that one around. And then conditions for its schooling form to be able to have those stats kind of just overloads Wishy-Washy stats and then puts it on a higher range compared to the other Pokemon in the 7th generation. Then we get into Lunala and all the other Pokemon as we keep scrolling down. And then after all that, we have Drampa for the next highest special attack. So special attack stat, pretty weird that we don't really see these hard-hitting, high special attack Pokemon by comparison, but they still exist. And then Xurkitree is going to be edged out by Megas and Mega Legendaries and then the Mega Alakazam, but right under the Mega Alakazam with that Xurkitree, 6th place for special attackers. Then we go to the defense stat, and defense has always been kind of crazy, that when we look at Shuckle, really set the bar for having that max defensive stat almost. And then Aggron, Mega Aggron, Mega Steelix came up as new contenders, and there's still a lot of Pokemon with 200 or more. Like, top 5 defensive Pokemon have 200 or more on the defense. And then we kind of keep going down. We do not encounter a high defensive Pokemon until we get to Toxapex. But then after the Toxapex, we have Golisopod. Golisopod isn't seen as a tanky Pokemon, it just has that high amount of defense to kind of run with its attack, and still a 90 on the special defense, so little tankier than people might expect. And then Buzzwole with 1 point less in defense, that's going to be the highest defense on an Ultra Beast. I do feel like Turtonator kind of got screwed over a bit by Game Freak as well. Like, maybe that could have just been like a 180 defense, just be like, yo, insane defensive Pokemon, because Game Freak has done it before, that there's just these random high defenses. Like, look at Bastiodon. 168 defense, 138 special defense, doesn't get regenerator, doesn't get recovery for sustain, still exists and isn't really used that often. So Toxapex just kind of shows that Game Freak can go overboard on the tanks. Then we just have random Pokemon like Avalugg being a very specialized defensive tank, and these other specialized defensive tanks kind of showing maybe Turtonator could have gotten a bit more. I mean, Cofagrigus has more defense than it. You don't really think about that when Turtonator is supposed to be like a defensive built kind of Pokemon. But that's kind of the reality that we have with these Pokemon right now. Looking at the special defense, not as crazy as the defense stat, because we don't just have these rock Pokemon and these Mega Rock Pokemon that kind of boost the special defense to crazy amounts. And then, like, number 10 is going to be Aegislash at 150 on that special defense. Well, number 10 on defense still has 168. So when we get down to 150, there's going to be a bigger difference for that. So the special defense, just on average, going to be lower in general. But then we get all the way down, and we don't see it until Wishy-Washy. So we have Toxapex as the highest special defense, and then Wishy-Washy as the next highest special defense, and then Arachnid right under the Wishy-Washy. So kind of surprising ones, and then Nihilego is going to have the highest special defense for the Ultra Beasts. I feel like that with the Ultra Beasts, that Game Freak wanted to be a bit more careful about overloading its stats. Like, yeah, you can overload an offensive stat, go into boosting, and then that's just going to make sure the Pokemon has some kind of vulnerabilities. But if you make too high of a defensive stat, that just makes it where that Pokemon becomes invincible for that stat. That's no good, and especially if it becomes like Ultra Beast level stats. That could have gotten really scary really quick, and then it just kind of drops off from there as we go into Pyukumuku, and then it's like 130s, average kind of stats for those Pokemon breakdowns right there. And also it's kind of fun because when we look at the Tapu's highest stat is going to be 130, which also just made me realize that the typings line up with the evolutions a bit, and that's pretty crazy. And now we can go and look at the speed stat. So the speed stat belongs to Pheromosa being the 3rd fastest Pokemon. So Ultra Beasts are absolutely commanding. Now when we look at the hit points is going to belong to Guzzlord at 3rd, and then we have Kartana with attack, and then Pheromosa with speed. So Ultra Beasts just have in the top 3 of all Pokemon, and not just the 7th generation, which is pretty crazy. But then the speed stat is going to be Tapu Koko with 130 on that speed as the fastest 7th generation Pokemon that isn't an Ultra Beast or has a form, because I guess Greninja counts. So kind of in the same boat as Zygarde, that the form is introduced in the 7th generation, but it is from a different generation Pokemon, Greninja, with that 132 on the speed. It makes me wonder, like, what's going to happen if we get Mega Evolutions for 7th generation Pokemon, our Mega Evolution is going to be continually expanded because, yeah, they kind of went and dominated all the stats, but you only get 1 per battle, and that's pretty crazy right there overall. And then we go to the base stat total. Now, this is just going to be pretty obvious. Zygarde, though, with a little bit of a surprise, 708 on that base stat total, so locking down in the top 10. And then we just get to like Mega Pokemon, but there's no Mega 7th generation Pokemon, so that gets kicked down even more. And then we just go into the legendaries for Solgaleo and Lunala, 68 like most of the other legendaries. And then if we want non-legendary for the 7th generation, it's going to be Wishy-Washy, surprisingly having over 600 in its base stats, mostly because of the form stipulations. So it feels kind of reminiscent of the Slacking. That Slacking has legendary stats. It's on par with Kyogre and Groudon, but with the Truant ability, it doesn't always get to utilize those strengths. So with Wishy-Washy, it does get to have a high amount for a non-mega, non-legendary Pokemon. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I think that's pretty much all there is to discuss right now. Kind of went a little deeper in the list compared to 7th generation stats to other generations. See how they play even with Ultra Beasts and Megas and Legendaries. And I think it was a pretty fun and interesting video. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the trivia, learned something, or maybe just thought the video was cool in some way. If you did, please leave a like and comment. And also don't forget to subscribe if you're new to the channel and somehow made it all the way through to the end of this video. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.